Hey there, everyone, and welcome to my craft room. My name's Julianne Richards, and I'm an independent. Oh, I'm not. Welcome to my craft room. That's all I can say. I'm glad you've joined me today. Went into old habits then, didn't I? Okay, I'm just checking my volume, make sure that's okay. Welcome to my craft room. Okay, that's fine. Seems to be loud enough. Let's make sure all the images are okay. I don't think we're too bad. Okay, let's plow on. I have been getting intermittent messages from my router that I'm losing internet. What's the word? Internet connection from time to time. This during this thing. So anyway, we'll see how we go. I apologise if the internet goes in and out. I'm not really sure what's going on. I may have to turn it off and on again, as my husband just technically advised me to do. He's such a clever man. Anyway, so we're jumping on the bandwagon here and doing a double vision technique card. I'm actually using embossed panels for my feature panels there. As you can see, I'm not using designer series paper or pattern paper, which most other demonstrators that that I've seen online are actually using. I decided to use the embossed layers. I'm making two cards like this one, or I'm making one slightly different, but I'm making white on white cards because we've got a group swap at the moment. If you're in my Australia New Zealand card making group, you'll see that we're doing a swap at the moment. So yes, it's a white on white theme. So I thought nothing better than a lovely white on white. This one's got a seashell design on the embossing folder, and I've cut out one of the little seashells there for the feature there, and popped a little silver. I sort of thought to myself, white on white includes silver, surely. So we'll see how we go. So that's one of my swaps. I'm going to do another one. The theme for the swap was actually winter, snow, and white on white, because we're in autumn here in Australia at the moment. So looking forward to the winter. So winter, white, and winter, white on white, and snow. So the one I'm going to do now, I'm actually scraped together an old Stampin' Up snowflake embossing folder. So that's the embossing folder I'm going to use. And I found a die set that had a couple of little cute snowflakes. So I've already die cut those. That was the chic dies that I've used to die cut those two little snowflakes. It'll go nicely with my embossing folder. And I've got a little thank you there, a little silver embossed thank you there from a sheet of sentiments that I had in the craft room. So it's all a bit of everything going into this card. I really love being able to use whatever I've got on hand and use it, and not waste anything just because it happens to be a certain brand or it seems to be no longer available. I'm just using it all. It's great. Okay, so what I've done and I said it was going to have a couple of Julianne tweaks, and this is the Julianne tweak, or number one here, is I have got myself a card base. That's not the tweak, a white card base for my white on white, standard size there. And I have embossed the embossing folder twice. So I just popped the two pieces of thick white cardstock through my embossing folder on top of each other like that. And I just embossed it twice. So obviously when you do that, the one that went through at the bottom is not as sharp in detail as the one that went through on top. So the one on top is the one I'm going to be using for the actual wow factor of the technique. But I'll explain to you why I've embossed the second one as we go, just so you can see what I'm actually getting at. Now, the thing with this technique is that you cut this piece in sort of strips of your choice, either even strips or different sized strips. You can go thick and thin or all the same width. I'm going to go all the same width. And then you lay them out and you alternate them between sticking them to the card base and putting them up on dimensionals. So you alternate like that going along the card. So that's how you get that sort of double vision sort of look. I think of it more of a shutter, sort of a Venetian blind sort of thing. But anyway, that's how you get that look. Now, I've seen several demonstrations where they struggle in how to line those up. I saw a lady that actually measured inch along, put little pencil marks and laid them like that. I saw a lady who basically just butted them up against each other, and that was a little bit inaccurate because sometimes you're in, sometimes you're out, sometimes you're a bit crooked. That was a bit of hit and miss with that one. My way, I think it seems to work really well. And what I'm going to use is this one where I popped it through underneath, the one that's less sharp. I'm going to pop that onto the card base. And I'm going to actually use that as a guide. Now, sadly, I have used a really, really, really fine embossing folder, so I'm not sure how much of this you're actually going to see. Part of me is thinking that I should probably, for the sake of this demonstration, swap it out and use a more heavily embossed embossing folder just to make a card. Yes, that's what I'll do. Hang on, I'm going to pivot halfway through the demonstration. Always a bad thing to do, but I'm going to make it a bit easier for you to actually see what I'm doing. I'm going to get, bear with me, I'll be back. I'm going to get a really deeply embossed embossing folder. I will make this card for my swap, so watch out for the final details of that, but I'm going to make one that's easier for you guys to see. So I want a really deeply embossed embossing folder. So no, that layered florals one's pretty deep. Actually, I might use this one. I'm going to use one of our favourite, the daisy or the sunflower one from Stamping Up. I'll use that. I'll grab myself another couple of pieces. As I say, I think you guys will really struggle to see the really fine snowflakes on that one. So I'll take pity on you and do another one. So this bit of a pivot, just so it's easier for you guys to see what I'm doing. So I'm just going to cut these pieces down. They're about only 1/8 of an inch smaller than my card base. So there's not much trimming to be done. So there we go. I didn't want to trim. There we are. I'll pop that through my embossing folder. Bring my machine over. And you guys will be able to see a lot better what I'm actually getting at. So again, nice, deep, well-defined embossing folder. I'm going to just pop it anywhere in there. It doesn't matter. Now, the reason I decided it was easier to pop these through together is that you'll get exactly the same emboss. If you put them through separately to get them both sharp, you wouldn't get, I would struggle anyway. I don't know about anyone else, but I would struggle to get them exactly the same so you can use it as a template. Hope that makes sense. There we go. So now we're going to get a lovely, deep, easy to see, hopefully, emboss. Yeah, there we are. Much better. Gorgeous, gorgeous embossing folder, this one. Lots of techniques you can do with it. I'm not sure even if it's current. If we've got any Stamping Up demonstrators on at the moment, is this one still up and running and going? It was a favourite at the time. So the one behind is slightly less defined. So we're going to pop that one on first. I'm tempted to use double-sided tape, but I'll just use glue. This card base is the same size. I'm going to pop some glue on there. Now, this one, even though I popped it through underneath, it isn't that less sharp. It's the embossing folder, because it is so sharp and defined, it's not actually a lot less sharper than the one that we've popped on the front. So I'm just going to use it as a guide to add the layers. So there's our background. Now, I thought this was also a good way of doing it if you wanted to use a coloured card base. So if you can imagine, you cut this into strips and you lay them over the top, you're going to get the coloured, if you're using a coloured card base, you would get the colours showing up through up under here. So I thought if we're using a white layer, either embossed or not, you're going to stop that colour from the card base showing through. So there's a second reason that I thought the second layer of white was a good thing to do. So let's do this. So we're going to cut our card base into segments. Just can't see whether we've got many people. I know I've got a few on Facebook. Thanks for joining me, guys. Sorry for that, but I was really thinking of you when I swapped that out because I didn't think it would be easy to see. So we're going to chop this segment, this one here, into 1/2 inch strips. So that's 1.3 centimetres. So just starting, and it's important to cut all the way through. So this die, my trimmer seems to be having trouble with anything today. Maybe I've done something to it. So I'm pressing nice and hard to get that through, and make sure you keep your strips in the order that they come out, just so it makes it nice and easy to pick them in order when it comes to put them on your card. I'm going to cut it completely into strips. What is happening with you? That's caught there. What's going on? I haven't been able to get into the craft room for over a week, so everything was a little bit out of place when I did get in today. I had to tidy up first. My husband said to me, he said it's like him when he goes into his shed. He has to tidy up first before he can start anything, and that usually takes him longer than the thing he went in there to do. So I felt a bit like that. Benjamin's been in here this week, or a bit of last week and the weekend. So yeah, it was a little bit disorganised. So as you can see, I'm keeping all those strips in the right order. I mean, this one might work out so well that I just decide to use this one for my swap instead. It's still white on white, isn't it? 1/2 inch, 1/2 inch. Now the last one's going to be a little bit less than 1/2 inch because it's not exact measurements there. So that's the last 1/2 inch one there. This little 1/4 inch it'd be. I'm going to not use that one, and I will cut. I'll leave it there. Where is it? Yeah. So we might use it when we come back to the end. Okay, so there's our card base with our embossed panel on it, and then we're going to use these. So what I'm going to do is leave the first 1/2 inch just with the flat. So I'm going to bring in the second strip. So we're going to do every second strip. So the second strip, I'm going to pop a foam strip on the back of that. Make sure I do it the right way up so the right embossed side is facing upwards. Cut that off there. And this is where we can use the bottom one to line up the top one. I'll just move that out of the way. So I'm coming in here. I can see that that pattern there corresponds with the daisy at the top. And then I'll basically, where's that fluff come from? There's been cats in my craft room. What I can do is, if I get the light right, I can line up the detail on the one that's underneath with the detail of the one I'm bringing in. So that's exactly lined up with the pattern there at the bottom. And then I can just be a little bit tricky and line it up with the pattern at the top as well. So I'm going to bring it closer so I can actually get my head over it and actually line it up. And there is lined up perfectly with the pattern. Okay. So you're using the pattern underneath to line up your raised piece. Now I'm going to skip the next one. Now what I was thinking is that if the pattern at the bottom was really faint, you could then bring in the sharp one and lay that over and actually stick that with some glue. But as I say, I don't think the pattern is too bad. So this bottom one isn't too soft. So I'm going to just skip that completely and bring in the next one, which is this one here. Again, we're going to use the pattern underneath to line it up so we're exactly where we need to be. A strip of foam. You can use a sort of a series of foams dimensionals or foam squares if you want to, but I find this foam strip works really well, and you don't end up with any sort of dips or shadows where your foam squares are. I also did find that it's best if you're embossing to use a thick cardstock to emboss with, because otherwise it gets very fragile, and you do end up with dips between, around the edges and stuff. That seems okay. Have I gone a little bit too far? I think I've gone a little bit too far at the bottom. Just lift that up a little bit. You can always get your dimensionals and things off if you move quick. There we are. So then that's our next strip. We're just going to skip the next one and bring in the 6th or 5th, it must be. Use that little bit there. And again, just watching to make sure we match our pattern. No, I've picked the wrong one. It should be this one. No, that's that one. What are you doing, Julianne? This one? Oh, apologies. I've used the wrong one. I've got them out of order. Maybe this isn't the best way, but anyway. That's we are. That's the next one. That's better. So again, I'm going to line it up with the pattern underneath. Line it up with the little lines, the little veins on the flowers. Make sure it's straightish. There we are, that one. Now the next one would be this one. I've wasted some. Yep, that's the next one. I might use this little end piece here. Now bringing that along so it lines up with that there, those flowers, that little piece there. Sorry, I'm going to bring my head in again to the shot just so I'm lining it up correctly. Apologies if you can see the top of my head. Maybe not. There we are. Is that one? This is the next one, and then this must be it. Let's see. Yep. Yep, that's the next one. Line that rib up with that little piece of that flower. Those petals, they all line up together as we go up the card. Yes, they should. Yep, yep. And that's where it is, there, and there. And the end piece will be our tiny little piece that we actually just kept. It's got to go right on the very edge there. Thankfully, our strips are nice and thin, so I can fit it across. Now, the alternative would have been to trim your card down so that you just exclude this little end piece, but would have had to do that earlier. So we're just going to use this tiny little end piece. Tell you what, cat fur. One thing I'm not going to miss when the kids move out. There we go. Just the end little piece there. And that goes right on the very end. There we are. Okay, so there we are. So that's our like double vision daisies there. And you can see it hasn't taken us too much to line up all those patterns with the top embossed piece with the bottom embossed piece. Now, if you really wanted to, I suppose you could bring in these other pieces that we've missed, and you could quite easily fit them in between and glue them down if it worried you that the pattern behind is slightly not as sharp as the pattern that we've raised up. But to me, in this particular card, it doesn't make much difference because of the quality of the embossing from this particular embossing folder, you really can't notice the difference between one layer and the other. So there we are. So that's our embossed daisies. Now, as with the original card, I'd fussy cut some snowflakes, which aren't particularly appropriate for this card. But if I had, I will not fussy cut, I died cut some snowflakes. I won't use those on this card because obviously it's a sunflower card, not a snowflake card. I might find myself a little white daisy or something. I might cut a daisy using the daisy punches, I think, and then using my little sentiment, I'll go in across like that and pop some bling on it, which will be around the room somewhere, and that would be the finished card for that one. So there we are. So that's my hints with the dual vision or the double vision card. I suggest, as I say, you use stiff cardstock if you're using embossed layers, or very thick paper as well. If you're using designer series paper, I would suggest using the strips of foam squares rather than individual foam squares, because otherwise you're going to get a bit of a valley mountain effect as you look up and down the card. I also suggest that, what else was the suggestion? Use the thick cardstock, and you can use the two layers of the embossing just like that. Okay, well, that's my card. Hopefully you enjoyed that one. I'd like to see if you give it a go yourself in your craft room. Apologies I had to pivot there, but as I say, I think this one was much easier for you to see what I was doing with the embossing than the really little fine snowflakes that I originally decided to do. Okay, well, thanks very much for watching. Please leave me a message if you have any questions about what you've seen. Apologies if the internet dropped out. I don't think it did. I think we got through okay. Have a great rest of your week, and I will see you all again next time.